Team Dominica, the people of Dominica at home and abroad. Good afternoon. We heard earlier today from Roosevelt Skerritt a desperate vote-catching effort to trick and deceive the people of Dominica, masquerading as an address to the nation of Dominica. I want to make it clear up front that the United Workers' Party is not directing any protest action. The people of Dominica, the young people of Dominica, are protesting to secure free and fair elections with integrity as the backbone of government of the people, by the people, for the people. That is their right. They are citizens of the Commonwealth of Dominica, and Dominica belongs to them as it belongs to all of us. The United Workers' Party stands firmly with the people of Dominica, protesting, standing for rights, and insisting on electoral reform. The statements of Roosevelt Skerritt about the protest action yesterday are categorically untrue. Protesters have been engaged for a number of days, pleading peacefully for the President of Dominica to address the people on the situation facing the conduct of free and fair elections. These protest actions did not fall from the sky, and they're not being pursued by aliens. The people involved are Dominicans. Dominican human beings with rights, with concerns, with cares, with fears, with worries, with anxieties, with emotions about the state of play in their country and the dictatorial, tyrannical behavior of one man. Electoral reform in Dominica has been on the agenda for more than 15 years. We have the 2008 Electoral Reform Initiative of the Independent Electoral Commission to cleanse the voters list and issue ID cards for voting that was rejected and sabotaged as madness by Anthony Astafan, acting for and on behalf of Roosevelt Skerritt. Essentially, the protesters want the President of Dominica to ensure that government provides the necessary resources for the Electoral Commission to organize free and fair elections with the assistance of the Commonwealth, the OAS, CARICOM, in implementing the basic reforms that the Commission decided on and the people agreed with more than 11 years ago. I want to be clear this afternoon that the incident in the evening of November 18, 2019 was instigated by members of the police squad. It was not the protesters, but the police that interrupted the flow of traffic to the entire south of the island because of a directive from higher authority that the people should be prevented at gunpoint from having an audience with the president, the key guardian of their constitution. On the issue of instigating violence, which we heard much about, it is the dispensing of tear gas canisters against persons who carried only placards that was an act of violence. The inconvenience to guests of hospitality establishments in the area was wholly and solely the responsibility of the police, who believe, contrary to democratic norms in the home countries of our tourists, that protesters in Dominica are not human beings. If they disagree with Roosevelt Skerrit and his course of action for and on behalf of the people of Dominica, then they have no right to exist and should therefore be brutalized with impunity and with no regard for collateral damage. I say to the people of Dominica this afternoon that Roosevelt Skerrit is violently in breach of the oath of office in which he swore to serve without fear or favor, affection or ill will, and that in the execution of the functions of the office of Prime Minister, he will honor, uphold, and preserve the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Dominica. With favor to himself and ill will to the people of Dominica, Mr. Skerrit has violently attacked the people's right to free and fair elections, and he has unrelentingly assaulted the constitutional rule of law and good governance in our nation. These are behaviors that merit responses. When that is what you decide to do in the country where you are sworn to serve without fear or favor, affection or ill will, the patriots, the Christian people of good conscience will respond. They will ask questions. They will dissent. That is what democracy is all about. That is what living in free societies around the world is all about. And we believe that such gross misconduct by Skerrit in the office of Prime Minister necessitates his resignation and removal. We have communicated that to the President. Since 2008, Mr. Skerrit has used the position of Prime Minister to unconstitutionally direct and control the Independent Electoral Commission in his fight against the people's quest for a clean, accurate list of voters and identification cards for voting. As much as he doesn't expect any reaction to that, there's going to be reaction, because the people are not happy, nor are they comfortable, nor should they be with that level of abuse, that level of oppression of their rights. He has made it impossible for the Commission to accept and implement best practice electoral reform recommendations from the international community and civil society organizations in Dominica in the interest of free and fair elections in Dominica. He is an unapologetic enemy of the people's right to free and fair elections, given to the ill will of fear-mongering while securing favors for himself. We did not believe that he should be the one calling the elections to fairly determine government of the people, by the people, for the people. In the interest of peace, we decided, the United Workers' Party, to contest the 2019 election and to call on the power in people, which is greater than the people in power, to call on the people of Dominica to summon an unprecedented level of sacrifice and commitment against the theft of the 2019 election to which Roosevelt Skerrit is committed, which is why he has insisted there will be no electoral reform. But if he's not going to give the people of Dominica electoral reform, our position as the United Workers' Party is that we will call on the people in mass numbers to defeat him, even in his commitment to steal the elections. That, nonetheless, does not prevent any individual, any organization in Dominica standing firm and insisting on electoral reform because it is the right thing to do. And notwithstanding our decision to contest the election in the interest of peace, harmony, and stability in Dominica, we stand with every single organization, every single patriot, every single Christian of good conscience, continuing to insist that there must be electoral reform before the next election. And I'll tell you what is happening right now. We have the procedure for claims and objections provided for in the law to be engaged with respect to the preliminary list and the supplementary list issued after the close of registration on the night of the 6th of December. The 6th of November, sorry. We are now concerned that the Electoral Office, the Electoral Commission, is not in a position to deal with the numerous objections that we are legitimately raising to persons who are seeking to be entered on the voters' register, for a number of reasons. These are circumstances in which the evidence before us is that the Electoral Commission is not ready to hold an election, a free and fair election, on the 6th of December. Even now, as we go through the process of claims and objections with respect to these two last lists that have been issued. And it therefore falls to the President to exercise his authority in law and to postpone the date of the election so that the Electoral Commission can get ready. We wait to see what is going to happen because, of course, the mood and attitude of Mr. Skerritt and his gang will be to insist that everything remains as is. The people cannot be happy with a situation like that, nor can we be. And so we'll be insisting that attention be paid by the President, the embodiment of the state, to the readiness of the Electoral Commission for elections and the extent to which he, under law, can exercise authority to allow the Electoral Commission to better prepare itself than it is right now, given the state of play with the claims and objections procedure. I want to say this afternoon as well that Mr. Skerritt, in office, has unconstitutionally and illegally privatized $1.2 billion from the sale of Dominica's passports into sweetheart arrangements with friends and foreigners that afford the ruling party an inexhaustible source of funding to bribe and treat voters contrary to law and thereby steal the next election. We're seeing it unfolding before our very eyes every weekend with these million-dollar events with foreign artists. Every week, hundreds of thousands of US dollars in fees, hundreds of thousands of US dollars in expenses, and there seems to be no bottom in the pot from which this money is being spent. We know that this money is not money raised by the Labour Party's political machinery. This is money straight from the sale of Dominica's passports. And while Dominica is struggling with the legitimate expenses of government, the political party, the Dominica Labour Party, is operating with no let or hindrance on the millions and millions of dollars it is spending on its election campaign. We say that this is wrong, and we understand why the people of Dominica would be upset about that. A lot of people in Dominica are suffering. A lot of young people in Dominica are without jobs. And they're watching a country, they're living in a country in which the Prime Minister and his gang in government can do what they want for themselves and their election campaign with the people's money, while the people are suffering for jobs and opportunities to earn a decent living in Dominica. It cannot be right. And Mr. Skerritt has to understand that there will be reaction to that, there'll be opposition to it, there'll be dissent to it, and he must allow the people to express themselves. This is a democracy, and so it shall remain. Mr. Skerritt, for all the talk we heard from him this morning, he has facilitated and or supported incursion by foreign mercenaries to destroy the parliamentary opposition with the aid and comfort of members of the National Security Forces, thereby posing a clear and present danger to the lives and general welfare of all those in opposition to his regime. Under the direction and control of Skerritt, who has vowed there should be no opposition in Dominica, the police stand tainted by lawlessness, bias, and cannot be trusted with guaranteeing the security of ballots in the upcoming election. This is a man who, based on all that, has really made himself unfit for public office, and in any other country would have been required to resign or would have been removed in the public interest. Yet here he is, behaving as though there is nothing wrong in Dominica. All that is wrong is that young people in the country are reacting, are disagreeing with the way in which they're being led and the things that are happening in their country. And he will not listen to them. When the young children at the youth parade said they wanted to march, when he had made a unilateral decision that there'll be no march, he couldn't listen to them. He walked out on them. He turned his back. He doesn't have to listen to anybody. That is his style. He doesn't have to listen to the people now, the young people now who are saying, we want electoral reform. We want these reforms to clean the list and to issue ID cards for voting. Again, he's turning his back on them. But not only is he turning his back on them and not listening to them, he is giving the impression to the world that something is wrong, not with the refusal to have electoral reform. Something is wrong with the young people who are insisting there needs to be electoral reform and there needs to be good governance in their country. Under Skerritt's direction and control, the police have arrested and they've prosecuted members of the opposition on trumped-up charges to undermine them in this election and to hamper the free and open exercise of the democratic right of the people of Dominica to freely choose their own leaders. Today, by the way, is International Day of Children. Children in Dominica who have been experiencing unprecedented violence and abuse in Dominica over the past 15 years, due in part to the soft approach to perpetrators and the absence of vigorous programs for the prevention of child abuse. The protesters are victims of that violence on a daily basis, as people are victimized on the job. They're denied proper health care. They're being put through delays in justice from the courts and physical abuse by the police. How could any leader believe that in the face of that sort of conduct, there will be no reaction, there will be no dissenting voice, there will be no protest action? There has to be. Because where we are today is a direct result of the conduct, the behavior of Roosevelt Skerritt and his belief that he owns Dominica. We are committed to ensuring that the young people of Dominica will never again have to live through that sort of experience, that sort of tyranny, that sort of brutality, when all they're doing is asking questions about the best interests of the country going forward. And we believe that the recent revelation or the recent discovery that the Electoral Commission is really not ready to give us or to be in charge or to conduct free and fair elections in Dominica underlines the necessity of the ongoing struggle around Dominica and the ongoing protest action to insist that there be reforms before the next election, notwithstanding the call for the elections and the decision by the main opposition party to go ahead and contest the election, even though it is aware of the numerous shortcomings and the elaborate scheme that is in place by the Dominica Labour Party to steal the election. We're calling on the international community to pay attention to what is happening in Dominica. What is happening in Dominica is not good. You have one man and a small group of people fighting against the right of the people to free and fair elections. We have made our position and concerns known to the international community, and we're receiving very favorable feedback from the Friends of Dominica around the globe in terms of what we want to see happen in Dominica. The next few days and weeks are going to be very interesting because we're involved now in a struggle to save Dominica and Dominica's democracy like we have never been involved with before. And the one man who is standing in the way of our democracy, our freedoms, is Roosevelt Skerrit. We expect that the international community will continue to keep its eyes on Dominica. We are asking the governments of CARICOM to refrain from sending members of the regional security system to Dominica to help the local police organization to brutalize citizens of the Commonwealth of Dominica simply expressing their democratic right to protest for rights. And I heard this gentleman who is leaving the office of Prime Minister, talking about the image of the country and how the image of the country is impacted by protest action. And tourists will not want to come to Dominica, and investors will not want to invest. Well, we have a so-called investor, you know. They were supposed to come with money, but they used our own passport money. And rather than put their hundreds of millions, they went away with our hundreds of millions. And now they're tied up in international courts. Fighting for their share of our Dominica passport money. Roosevelt Skerrit believes that does no injury to the image of the Commonwealth of Dominica. And while these two men from range are sitting on their 163 million US dollars, and their partner at the UN mission for Dominica, the Italian Paolo Zampoli, is moving the court for his share. They are filing actions in international court against Zampoli, claiming that he is blackmailing them. But that doesn't hurt the image of the country. An ambassador for Dominica, an ambassador of Skerrit at the UN in Dominica, suing developers of a hotel project in Dominica for his share of the development profit, and they're accusing him of blackmail, all in the international community, as far as Mr. Skerrit is concerned, does no damage to the image. It is young people standing up for rights in Dominica that injure, as far as he's concerned, injures the image of Dominica. The image of Dominica has also been injured by the revelation that Ali Reza Monfared is now in jail for 20 years in Iran and has now been ordered to repay 1.3 billion US dollars to the state of Iran. Monies that the courts in Iran agreed was stolen from Iran. There are members of this cabinet, Mrs. Skerrit and members of this cabinet, received gifts of trips to Malaysia, monies, campaign finance contributions, etc., from this gentleman who now has to repay $1.3 billion to Iran. The simple logical conclusion we can make is that they, the members of this cabinet of Roosevelt Skerrit, are beneficiaries of some of that money which Iran claims was stolen from it and now wants it back. While all that was happening, Mrs. Skerrit had given Ali Reza Monfared a diplomatic passport. So we conclude as well that while he was stealing money from Iran, for which he's now been found guilty, he was a diplomat, holding the diplomatic passport of Dominica and benefiting from diplomatic immunity from Dominica. Mrs. Skerrit doesn't believe that any of that injures the interest of Dominica around the world. It is the young people who disagree with him. It is the people who stand up against his abuse of their rights and privileges that he wants to accuse of injuring the image of Dominica. Mrs. Skerrit has been involved with the likes of Madueke and Francesco Corallo, all having Dominica diplomatic passports and diplomatic immunity. Ng Lap Seng, jailed in the United States for money laundering, bribing UN officials, and other misdemeanors. None of that Mrs. Skerrit references as a concern about the image of Dominica overseas. But he's crucifying young people in Dominica and upstanding patriots, Dominican Christians of good conscience. He's the one. These are the ones that he is trying to pin the injury to Dominica's international image on. There is no greater threat to the image of Dominica overseas than the conduct of Roosevelt Skerrit in the office of Prime Minister. Which is why the people of Dominica have a duty. The people of Dominica have a duty to get him out of office by whatever means necessary, so that the country can once again become a responsible member and citizen of the global family of nations. Because right now, under Roosevelt Skerrit, we are behaving like a rogue state, where the government believes it has the right and responsibility to hand diplomatic immunity to crooks and criminals so that they can move seamlessly across borders doing their crimes against humanity. We have to bring that unfortunate episode in our history to an end, and the upcoming elections offers us the opportunity to do just that. We are heartened with the enthusiasm with which Dominicans of all walks of life are embracing the opportunity to make unprecedented sacrifices in ensuring that this election that Mrs. Skerrit has planned to steal will be the last election that he wins in the Commonwealth of Dominica. We appreciate the support of the international community because I know they know this is not going to be easy. The deck is stacked against us, but as we always say, the power in people is greater than the people in power. And this is going to be the manifestation of just that for the first time in the history of electoral politics in the Commonwealth of Dominica. So, a lot is happening right before our eyes. The media is reporting. The people of Dominica are discussing. But there are only some people who recognize the evil and the danger of what is in front of us. This total capture of the monies belonging to the people of Dominica being used against the people of Dominica in an election has to be turned back. It has to be defeated, or else Dominica will disappear. Dominica will disappear under the weight of the corruption and the incompetence of this regime and the commitment to enslave Dominica to the will of Mr. Skerritt and his foreign interests at a time when we are celebrating 41 years as an independent nation. We have never been more dependent. We have never been more vulnerable. The patriots of good conscience are rising to bring an end to that very sordid state of affairs, and we stand with them and for them. Thank you. God bless you.